I'll go quickly and try and make this a little bit more interactive as well. If feel free to interrupt as we go. Yeah, so this is intended to outline our general product direction. I'm not going to read this out, but things can change. But this is where we're heading now with Acrolinx. Before I talk about the details of what we're doing and what's changing, we have a number of guiding principles that help us decide what we do. We have hundreds, thousands actually, of feature requests, an enormous backlog of things we'd like to get done. How do we decide what we want to do and what we, for the moment, don't want to do? So, 4 guiding principles. The first thing, as I mentioned this morning, is important as we look at the range of possibilities in helping organizations create content. Different kinds of content, different kinds of people using the platform with different backgrounds and all of the stuff we've just heard, for example. In that environment, it becomes impossible for any company to deliver everything that range of use cases would benefit from. And so the conclusion to that, rather than getting frustrated by the fact that we can't build everything that we see coming along, is to open up the Acrolinx platform. We've called it a platform for a long while because we see it as a platform for doing for managing the guidelines behind what you want to get done with your content. But changing from that kind of view to a platform to a platform in the sense that other people, other technology providers, and other companies creating interesting insights can use the Acrolinx platform as a way of delivering those insights to content creators. We've had some interesting conversations with a number of our customers. As you know, we sell tech to tech companies. They have a lot of interesting engines that can create interesting insights, and they'd like to get those to the content teams. They'd like to provide those as analytics on the content that's getting created. They don't have any way of doing that. And we have the machinery to be able to analyze huge amounts of content, gigawords of content, and measure it against those insights. And so the platform idea has suddenly become a very liberating way of us thinking about how can we deliver more value more quickly to the content teams we work with. So I'll talk more about that in a second. The second thing that's really important is to increase the way in which we learn. And I'll talk more about that in separate slides. But clearly, this has been a little bit of a journey with our customers. We come from an AI background. Machine learning has always been a big part of what we do. It's not the only thing we do, but it has to be part of what we do. And a big part of that is being able to scale more quickly in the way that you adapt the platform. It becomes a living, breathing thing. This has not just been a journey for us. We've had this machinery and these techniques available to us for a long time. It's become something we can now talk to people about. I bet if we'd been here 5 years ago and said, give us all your content and we'll learn stuff from it, we would have got very, very hands-off reaction. We tried, and typically people weren't very open to that. Or maybe they were, but typically the organizations weren't. Now that has changed. One thing that AI has been very good for, the hype around AI, is opening up people's awareness to the fact that actually sharing data or releasing data to allow machine learning to look at those things is a way in which everyone benefits, particularly. We're not talking about sharing across customer data across customers, but learning has got to be more of a part of what we do. And as I say, this awareness that sharing is good or learning from data is good, is good for both sides. The third important part is this showing that we can bring value. What do I mean by that? At the moment, we talk a lot about the things that we do, and we all work for, big companies with focused roles within those companies, and occasionally it's difficult to know where is the value behind what we're doing. And I thought it was great that you talked about we don't write technical content, we help keep the aircraft in the air, right? That's the value behind what you do. Creating better service material for the product will help the product be more valuable. And that getting metrics around that and actually bringing that to the content teams as they create content, doing this has this value, it has this impact, is an enormously powerful thing. And thirdly, from a user experience, we've seen the impact of the changes we've made, and we want to invest much more in changing the product, continuing to change the product, so that this becomes something, not something that people have to use, but something that they want to use. And to Gunnar's point of wanting to get to the tens of thousands of users, we get to that point when people see the benefit, but also they enjoy the experience. So, some of the highlights of the changes we've made already. This isn't going to be this detailed all the way through, but I'll just give you some detail on what's happening right now. We've started a new version naming scheme. We, like everyone else, like I said, we're moving faster, so we're moving towards instead of quarterly releases, monthly releases, and for most of the cloud stuff will happen even faster than that. So there we'll be moving gradually towards a much higher release cycle to get more capability, more innovation out to you faster. Font recognition, confidential checks. If you don't know what these things are, they're probably not relevant for you. But confidential check is for companies that work in sensitive areas where they need to be able to check content without the content itself being traceable in any way. Changing some of the scoring strategies. A really important part of the platform strategy is the new APIs that we have, which allow us to have build much more rapid integrations with other technologies, or more likely to have partners build integrations with our technology much more quickly. We've also introduced native support for the XML formats under Office. Lots of other improvements and bugs fixed. The major themes for 2019 are four key areas. The first thing is the Acrolinx API. As I say, making this API as easy to use and as flexible as possible is a really important part of us opening that up to third parties, to be able to connect to other platforms. On the one hand, bringing in insights from outside, but also increasingly our customers are building Acrolinx into their workflows, the way that processes happen, the way that content moves through the organization. All of that is leading to much more automated checking. Sometimes some of our deployments are purely automated checking for the first phase of the project, with no interaction with users until quite a later stage in the project. And so automated checking is becoming a key part of that. And of course, being able to use the API, being able to use Acrolinx, call Acrolinx wherever you need it through a process is incredibly important. Second part, the Acrolinx apps bringing insights from outside. Some will come from us, as I said, and some will come from others. These apps, you can think of it like an app store the platform idea is that you go there and you have things that you might want. Customers have asked for things like reading time. How long does it take to read this piece of content? It's a standard thing in some tools out there on the internet. Medium has a reading time thing, for example. Many of our customers are interested in creating content that has a maximum reading time. So they're not, because they're aware of this attention span that Ben told us about, and also the need to get stuff done. Plagiarism. I'll talk more about the background technology to this, but plagiarism is increasingly important. Actually, plagiarism is a bad thing, but also there are some good aspects to this as well. Looking at stuff, what's related, those kinds of use cases. SEO was mentioned already around the findability, bringing in third-party insights around findability, translation, summarization, etc. We're not going to build all these. Some of these other people already have really good solutions for these. We're going to build them into the platform. The Acrolinx Cloud AI, as we move more to the cloud, we can leverage more technologies that are available only in the cloud, particularly the ability to learn from more data more quickly. So the idea behind this is really that we'll be able to adapt and evolve much more quickly with the cloud architecture than we could previously. And the fourth thing is also, if you like, a user experience issue or a user experience topic. For a long time, when we talked about capturing the goals that you had, we talked about setting up your guidelines or your rules or whatever you want to call them. We had to go through this process of teaching people how to translate their guidelines that they had into Acrolinx settings. And we want to get away from that idea, especially as the deployments get bigger and we have more guidelines and more goals that people are thinking of deploying across different content types and different use cases in general. We want to think of it instead of having a process where you can go from very clearly and simply go from your written style guide, your written content strategy, your written audience kind of definition to setting up Acrolinx. We'll go through those quickly in detail. As far as 29 is concerned, we're interested in accelerating the pace of innovation, so we're investing heavily in R&D, a lot of new heads in our new office in Berlin, which we haven't moved into yet, February, actually nearly this month, I can say. As I say, moving into monthly cloud releases towards this continuous delivery idea, and a big part of that is for us at the same time to consolidate the platforms that we support. We have a significant portion of our engineering resources are dedicated to supporting the diversity of platforms that we allow people to run Acrolinx on. And we've decided that that's not in anybody's interests. So what we'll be doing is standardizing on one or possibly two technology stacks, which will allow us to deploy much faster. We only have to test on two stacks, and this will be the stack that we run in the cloud. So we will gradually retire those stacks which are costing the most overhead, and as we thin this down to one standard technology stack. That's a conversation we'll be having with all of you as we talk about what does the future look like. When I mentioned the monthly cloud releases, please be aware that these are cloud releases. On-prem releases will not be monthly, and so we will then also have to have a conversation about how do you move gradually towards the cloud. The advantages to everyone of moving to the cloud should be clear. No managing your own updates. No need to worry about where the latest version is. No need to send us support packages when you're trying to get support from us. All of those things, enormous benefits, and on top of that, some of the functionality we release will eventually be cloud only, because some of the technology we use won't run on on-premise technologies. Yes.
It's extremely important that you communicate the roadmap and the time plan for this, because we need to deal with Volvo IT also.
Yeah. Very aware of that. And we're not going to be switching anybody off anytime soon. This is about a journey that we're on, and I'll give you some of these details in a second. If you wanted a time frame, these are time frames for some of these features. In terms of the time frame to moving everyone to cloud, we would like everyone to move to cloud by the middle of next year. Everybody. And that's a conversation we have to start now. And as I say, if you'd asked me this 2 years ago or a year ago, that big banks would move to putting their content, guidelines and running their content, sending their content to the cloud, having it checked and sending it back again, I would have thought you were insane. But now it's completely standard practice in all the industries we're active in. And as I say, the cost for us of maintaining all these different deployment architectures is crippling our ability to innovate. Some of the strategic topics that we have, very important for us. A key part to, as I talked about this morning, these increasingly complex environments for content getting created. Lots of tools out there that people use typically. As we've tried to provide, basically the requirement behind this is we want to know how long did it take a piece of content to get created. We want to know when a piece of content starts, did it get better through some process? And of course, suddenly it was clear to us, or it's clear very quickly, that as content moves through different tools on its journey through a complex enterprise workflow, you can't track it. You can't go by the file name. You can't go by metadata on the content. And so in order to provide any meaningful analytics about the life of a piece of content through its journey, we are going to need to create a persistent identifier, something that we can always use to identify that piece of content on its journey. And we're calling that fingerprinting. It provides us with a way to provide detailed analytics over the journey of that. Has something got better? How long did it take to get this finished? And will allow also you to track content as it goes through different content management systems, as it gets republished and repurposed, and will provide you with a way of following the life cycle of your content that hasn't been possible up to now. The APIs I've talked about briefly is part of this Acrolinx strategy, the part of the platform strategy. Every aspect of the platform will be available through the API and can be then automated, including all of the settings and pulling stuff out of the analytics and all that kind of thing. We will be extending the API with all sorts of more sophisticated terminology capabilities as we go through 2019 as well. Yeah, the platform picture, if you like, I talked about this morning briefly, but it's really this idea of Acrolinx with the normal capability in the middle, the known capability which we'll continue to add to, but then we'll dock in additional capabilities into that for all the different use cases that come up. I think I've covered most of this already. The idea is that we can build additional applications into those. We will have longer term some sort of app exchange where you'll be able to download apps to add capability provided by us and our partners to do that. And obviously, first of all, creating the APIs, but then allowing this way of easily activating external applications. We're already seeing this in some of the new integrations that we're building, that the implementation time for getting new integrations going is much, much faster. The idea is that this can be more or less self-service and getting down to first integrations being available in hours rather than days or weeks, which is the current situation. Yeah, I honestly haven't changed this slide. This was our slide that we had anyway, where we've heard it from lots of our customers, and obviously we've been very keen to do this. Part of the move to cloud and being able to access larger deployments is it has enabled us to collect enough data to start to learn from user feedback. We've started to build feedback capabilities into the product that will allow you to register false alarms and do those kinds of things. Capture that, and then we can start to both capture it initially just as data, but then once we've captured enough of that data, start to be able to learn from it automatically. Obviously, everyone's now aware that in order to machine learn stuff, you need a lot of data. So the data collection is the first part of that. The data collection is effectively a feedback mechanism that will be manual to start with, and then will gradually get more automatic. Very clear point that I made already, worth stressing. This is not where we put all of everyone's customer data into one big pot and start learning stuff. We have, of course, data agreements with all our customers, and we will continue to respect those such that the data, your data remains separate, and your language models that we will build, and they will be kept very, very clean and tidy from each other. There will, of course, be some generic things like grammar and spelling that will get better by virtue of kind of the generic content that we put through the platform, but your specific content remains your IP. So it's very specific for 2019, collecting user feedback through the sidebar. So you'll be able to just, individuals will be able to click on tabs and say on cards and give feedback on them. We will automate part of the solutions work currently involved in preparing and finalizing updates to guidance packages, and then the next step will be to use machine learning to tune the guidance, for example, to deactivate rules for specific types of content that are generating a lot of false alarms. So this problem where you go to a new group and all of a sudden that new group is generating all the false alarms, and you have to rush in and switch everything off before they get annoyed with you. We'll be able to do that automatically, at least semi-automatically. That we'll be able to get data from them, run it through, and the most irritating false alarms will be deactivated automatically, and then can be reactivated as you work through it. Capturing the goals, I'll speed up a little bit. The idea behind this is that we'll have a single place where you can really translate your content strategy into Acrolinx configurations. So for example, you won't be able to see this very clearly, but increasingly, we have a conversation about, I have a blog article. How do I set up Acrolinx for my blog article? That you'll be able to just much more quickly and intuitively design a new guidance profile for the specific content type that you have, but thinking of it in the way that you think about content rather than the way the engine thinks about content. Similarly, thinking about the individual components of a particular piece of content strategy. So we're thinking about our product content. Let's put all of the guidelines we have and goals that we have for a particular content type, in this case technical product content. Let's put all of that in one place. Right now, if you're thinking about your checking profile for technical product content, you have to do the terminology over here, you have to do the tone of voice over here, you have to do the style over there. We're going to turn that around and think of it presented in the way that you think about it, that you have the challenge, right? I'm thinking about technical product content. I want to think about all of the aspects of that in one place. That's the idea behind this. And similarly, thinking about the way in which you set up your guidelines in a much clearer, more intuitive way that's much more closely aligned with the way you think about your style guides and branding guidelines now. Gamification is really, really important. When we first started talking about this internally at Acrolinx, everyone thought it was a trivial thing. And the more we explained to them what this means, the more excited they got about it. I'm really excited about this. We talked about this being a product that people love to use, that using the Acrolinx platform should be something people look forward to rather than get nervous about. A big part of this, and this is not a new tactic, but it's something that we're really keen to invest more in, is to drive more user engagement by providing what's called gamification, but it's not really about gamification. It's more about how can we show you the value of what you're doing. So when you're using Acrolinx, you're improving the content for some goal that you have in mind as an organization. We want to be able to make that visible to you. And that means that the writers can, for example, get, you've checked lots of content. Well, okay, at least you're checking lots of content. That's a first level of gamification, if you like. But also, you're reducing reading time. You're increasing clarity. You have increased the clarity of the content that you've worked on by this amount. You have reduced the reading time of that content by this amount. Measuring this kind of data and providing that to users will automatically help them understand the value that they're bringing by working through these things. And rather than it becoming a drudge, it can become something that you understand the value of. It's a really important feature. I think I'm going to skip over most of these tactical topics because I think we've covered most of them, or you'll know about them already. But we're working on more DITA support, XML and PI. I don't think more on software development stuff. Don't really need to. Some of this I've outlined, but some of this is probably too detailed for now. Confidential content I've mentioned already, term searching, adding. This is kind of part of our platform and app strategy, but making more available through the sidebar that will add terminology browsing and contribution directly through the sidebar as a way of also getting more engagement on that.
I was just thinking now, maybe you said something, but the problem that we seem to have is when we have long sentences and the guidelines for that and for passive voice, and I think we all have those, that the lack of suggestions. I mean, even if you are a skilled writer, that you said, you're sitting there thinking, okay, change this into active phrase instead, and
there is definitely a case as you move towards more non-writers and more people as content. There is always a point at which, if the content is is beyond the model, the stuff that we've already seen. Acrolinx doesn't really know where to start. And so it will tell you, if you write a really long, complicated sentence, it's not going to pick the sentence apart. It's going to say, I don't know what to do with this, it's too long. And of course, that's not very helpful at one stage, especially if you're telling someone who's not really a writer, you need to, this is a bad sentence. What are you going to do? And of course, you would hope that by already splitting the sentence up, we'd then be able to start looking at the individual sentences and then give feedback on them. But then you're in multiple iterations. I think this is definitely something where we have ambitions to get better at the coaching piece. Exactly. Exactly. And a big part of that will be exactly the fingerprinting will give us the ability, for example, to say this content started out like this, right? Then we had an expensive editor who fixed this content. But because we can see that the content has been on that journey, we already have then an input-output pair that we can learn from. Now we'll need a lot of those. We can't just learn from one case, say, okay, I can see that when you have a sentence like this, change it like this. But if we have 100,000 of those sentences with a million different cases where these kinds of transformations are happening, we can start to learn from them. So that's kind of the idea behind that. But that's a little bit, that's going to have to take the time that it takes to get the data collected. So I'm not going to say this is going to be done by the summer, but that's definitely for that reason, that there are some things that aren't some changes that aren't obvious until you see them, and so you have to start by really collecting massive amounts of data, and then looking what happens to that data as it goes through the process. And the idea would be that instead of you having to do this over and over again, the system would gradually learn to follow what you're doing. So you'd have the coaching on one side, but you'd also have the system would get smarter. Does that make sense?
I'm not updated on your licensing model right now, but what's your view on other kind of competitors like Grammarly that have you have a free license, and then you have something that you can buy to get more options. Mm-hmm. Do you have something similar, or what's your view?
No. I mean, Grammarly is a very different product. It's a very good product. I think they've done a really good job of for what they're doing, but they have a very restricted view. They have basically a one-size-fits-all approach to giving language feedback. So it's grammar and spelling and a bit of simple style checking. It's very generic to every kind of use case that you have. So typically, our customers have a number of things that the Grammarly models aren't really built for. The first thing is, as Mika would say, is terminology. The ability to manage the specifics that the company has in terms of their branding, their messaging, the technical details of all of that stuff. Grammarly has no way of managing that and ensuring that as that. The second thing is most of our customers are developing guidelines for their content that are different for different types of content. So rather than just saying randomly, just make this content better, you're making it better for the specifics of your target audience. You're writing for a specific type of person. And the design of all those different target audiences that you want to write for, and help giving people feedback on writing for those audiences, is not something Grammarly is doing. Right?
I totally agree that you cannot really compare this Acrolinx to Grammarly. It's just that we are developing a CCMS system, and we can offer an integration with Grammarly right away. They can test it, and I would love to just make them test Acrolinx in some kind of way without having to pay anything. And then maybe later then, oh, this sounds looks wonderful.
If they, this is a longer discussion, but if they tested Grammarly out of the box, if they tested Acrolinx out of the box the way, as in for free, it would only do what Grammarly does. So, you know, generically, the product, generically all Acrolinx does is spelling and grammar and some standard style checking. Yeah, I mean, the value add of Acrolinx is sitting down and saying, okay, what do we want to achieve with our content as a brand? It's not generic grammar and spell checking. We're not in that market. We've decided we don't want to be in that market. Thank you.